when the switch is flipped. And that's why I like the term little by little by little by little, but then all at once, logarithmic decay. The little by little you can see. And I'll show you that here in 1 second. But you can see the little by little in all of these bilateral deals that are being struck and using the bridge and selling treasuries and buying gold. That's the little by little by little. And yes, the all at once, every country in the world has had to stockpile dollars for 50 years. It was 50 years last week that the deal was signed in order to buy oil. And if everyone had no incentive to ever hold those dollars again, the dumping of those dollars, this is the great reset I talk about, would create hyperinflation as that tsunami of dollars hit our shore, overwhelm the issuer, the US, creating hyperinflation. And the byproduct of hyperinflation is to see interest rates rise to compensate, not directed by the Fed or Powell, who doesn't want to do that and blow everything up. But if the market does it, we now have a villain to point to. Those guys dump the dollar. They're not taking the dollar for oil any longer. It's Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC and Saudi Arabia. How could they do this to us? Well, forget about the fact that we signed an executive order to go green, or that our bonehead, knucklehead, embarrassing lead economic advisor, who embarrassed himself horribly in that video that circulated around Twitter for the last few weeks about him trying to explain money creation and bond sales. His whole theory is to lose the reserve status. And when we talk about the share of reserves, as of just a couple of days ago, gold's share of global international reserves has jumped to 17.6% in 2023, the most in 27 years. The share has almost doubled since 2016 as central banks ramp up purchase. But here's the interesting part. Gold is now the second largest asset held in global central bank reserves, exceeding the euro for the first time ever. The number one is still the US dollar, but its 48% world share is down from 60%. Meanwhile, the central bank's net gold purchases saw a record in Q1 2024. They're selling dollars, they're selling euro, they're selling treasuries, and they are buying gold, which can't be sanctioned. And so, yeah, the all at once hasn't happened yet. But how hard would it be for OPEC to say we're done taking dollars for oil? That's the rumor that's been circulating around the internet, that the petrodollar deal wasn't renewed. Now, I would be the first one to scream that from the rooftops. But I haven't seen any official acknowledgement of that yet. So I'm not going to run with it other than to say a lot of people are saying it's already happened. I don't know if I can believe that or not. I never saw a 50-year timeline on the original agreement, nor have I seen any official statements from Saudi Arabia or the US. But I'll tell you one thing. We did see the United Arab Emirates say we don't want to take dollars anymore. And they're the seventh largest producer of oil in the world, and an OPEC member, and we're admitted into BRICS alongside Saudi Arabia. So to imagine an environment where the world dumps dollars because they're no longer needed for oil purchases, as every OPEC country is on the Belt Road, and all of these countries are moving away from this country because of sanctions and because of our behavior and because we're going green. So what do they need to work with us for? A currency where we've obviously chosen inflation over austerity, and a bond market that's been volatile as hell for the last couple of years. So yeah, time to move. And it's the safety in numbers. And if indeed we did see that moment, and Rafi is right, the all at once moment where dollars are forsaken because you don't need them for oil anymore. And to his point, every country in the world's had to stockpile them for 50 years. Yeah, the ramifications or the result would be disastrous, because you would see interest rates spike to compensate for that hyperinflation, and all of the assets in this country, stocks, bonds, real estate, and even the banks, which are over leveraged and undercapitalized, and the insurance companies are loaded with treasuries, they're all inversely related or correlated or valued to a massive spike in interest rates. So yeah, it would be disastrous, and it would happen very quickly. I've thought about it before. I mean, maybe the US is a pariah. No one wants anything with Lady Liberty on it. I don't know that that would be the case in the United States, but it could be certainly in the Middle East. And, maybe, people in Canada would rather own the maple leaf rather than anything else. People in the US would rather own the eagle. But I don't think it would have such a daunting effect on the eagles here in North America. But you go on websites. I was just in London, and I stopped into Sharps Pixley, and, they sell eagles there, and they're in the UK. So, who knows? I would just simply say that, yeah, if the United States was viewed that negatively across the globe, God help us if so, let's hope it doesn't happen. But if that were the case, yeah, I mean, maybe they wouldn't want anything with Lady Liberty on it. While it's the most sought after coin in the US, may not be the case in the rest of the world. And it's just like the Philharmonic being the most widely distributed coin in Europe. And obviously in Australia, it's the kangaroo. And and in the UK it's the Britannia. Not to say you can't get other coins, but I think the regional aspect, the image on the world stage certainly could have an effect outside the U.S. But yeah, I think it's if people are holding it in other countries, sure, it could be that we don't want anything with the U.S. stamp on it. But here again, these what if questions are always kind of hard to answer. You just have to suspend your imagination. But I could see that. I wouldn't expect to see it in the U.S., but in other parts of the world, sure, why not? If we actually make people that upset, it would make sense. All of this stuff I keep saying is too stupid to be stupid. God help us if they do push them into a nuclear war. I live in southern Florida, and you got nuclear powered submarines 60 miles off the coast of Palm Beach. And so when you talk about it being real, sure, it's real. But how can you blame the Russians? Now try to suspend your feelings on all of this stuff. You know, the way that we are provoking them. We are stealing their $300 billion in assets and using it to fund the war. We've already given them $200 billion in assets, including our weapons, including all of our surveillance and intel. And it is all but a declaration of war. Just because we're not the ones on the ground doesn't mean we're not involved in it. And this is why you often hear it being called a proxy war. I think it's horrible. I think what we are doing is about as stupid as can be. And it just goes part and parcel with our administration doing stupid things here at home, stupid things abroad, stupid things in monetary and fiscal policy. I mean, it's just, you can't make it up how stupid things have become. And this administration will go down as the worst in history. No question about it. And the fact that they would antagonize and provoke, and at the same time say, we're going to support, you know, Taiwan and in essence provoke China, throw more tariffs on China. I mean, this behavior that we have is getting very old by many of these other countries. And let's just hope they're not foolish enough to push us into a hot war with a country like Russia or China. It's incomprehensible, actually. And when you think about all of the things that have happened, Elijah, I mean, 17 million people in this country illegally, questioning of the judicial system and the electoral system, provoking nuclear powered or nuclear armed countries. Two of the three largest nuclear arsenals in the world were poking them, going around and seizing and stealing money from these countries. Everything we are doing, everything in 2020, and the censorship and the cancel culture and the wokeness and the break from the nuclear family, all of these things that little by little, then bang, it's all in your face. I mean, that little by little all at once happens. It's apropos for things that we've seen over the last few years. Like, these things weren't part of the fabric of this country when I was a kid. And now all of a sudden, right in your face, little by little, then bam, this is what we see. And it's everywhere. And the stupidity of the current administration and ranging from the breakup of the nuclear family, the wokeness, the merit-based society being thrown to the wind in favor of gender and sexual preference and these kinds of things. And I mean, you can't make it up. And then you look at the elections, you look at the border, you look at the lawlessness, you look at all of these things. And then we see arrests being made last night or the night before for eight terrorists suspected of, being Islamic terrorists that want to set off bombs in this country. What do you expect? We've let 17 million people in this country. 1% want to mess with this country. It's 170,000 people. That's a standing army, let alone 5 or 10%. And you can't make it up. So everything that we are doing, and it puts whipped cream on a stupid sundae when you start. And I don't blame Russia for feeling the way that they do against our provoking and our meddling and our interference. If we just would have listened to Thomas Jefferson way back when and just closed our borders, stop meddling in other people's affairs, build our infrastructure with our military, protect our country, fortify our border, stop messing in the 700 or 800 military bases around the country that are bleeding us dry, just like it did the Romans. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat its mistakes. And that's what we're doing right now, only much worse when you're dealing with, instead of, weapons that they had in World War II. We're dealing with hypersonic missiles that are 60 miles off the coast of Florida. This is just ridiculous. And hopefully cooler heads prevail. Hopefully we see a change in the administration. And I'll tell you, I don't even know if Trump can fix things. I don't know if we've shattered our trust globally, even where he could come and fix. God help us if this administration somehow retains power. You might as well, put your head between your legs and brace for impact. I mean that. And I not a political guy, but when you see these things, the continued provocation against Russia, and if it were the other way around and Russia was doing this to us, there would be hell to pay. And you know it. Everyone knows it. We look at it from one perspective. If it were the other way around, well, the drums of war would be beating, but we're just meddling in affairs that we should have nothing to do with, and the ramifications will be real. And it starts with de-dollarization and de-treasurization. It's a whole nother thing when you get into escalation into war with a country that could do some serious damage to this country. And we've never been invaded like that. We've never had the threat of weapons hitting our country, and God forbid. But look how normal it is for us to see us involved in wars around the world, and to provoke these countries who have the ability to retaliate in a very substantial way is just stupid.